webinar. All right, so first off, my name is Kwanayazi. Kwanayazi in Ishia, my Deshiji Nishle. Nash Ejidine Bashin Aro Bitani Dashe Do the Beslejan Dashinala. I am one of several professional tutors with the Net College Learning Center. I specialize in English and writing specifically. We also have other tutors that specialize in other subject areas. And we are subject-based tutors here at the Net College, meaning that we tutor in courses that we've taken or we have experience in, and we allow ourselves to tutor in those certain core subject areas. So it depends on what the students want in terms of what type of tutoring service they need, and we can sort of offer our help in those areas that you seek. So again, I am one of the professional writing tutors. Specifically, I've been in this position for a year and a half now to date, and I have Deanna on the other side on the Zoom session. She needed to give me access to this webinar version of this presentation. So the webinar version is actually, it'll just be me speaking and presenting. You'll be able to actually ask questions through the presentation within the Q&A feature on your screen at somewhere on the bottom. And I'll be able to answer questions along the way when it's relevant to what I am speaking about during the presentation. So then otherwise, I'll get to some of the questions maybe at the end of the presentation. So some things I'll be covering, I'll be covering the same material as yesterday's session if you weren't here. So if anyone that was here from yesterday, this will be the same exact presentation. You know, it is until early next month when I will be going into the next steps into the research process. All right. Let me share my screen here. So again, this presentation is going to focus on the research process between, well, Audrey, can you give me sharing permission? So this presentation will focus on the research process. So between sort of like a beginner level to an intermediate level, it'll focus on how to actually start writing the research paper through, you know, exploring ideas and topics that are, you know, strong, and that's our goal for today. All right, so I have sharing ability here. So here's our agenda for today. I think this is right. All right, so today we'll be going over, again, the research process, focusing on finding your topic, right? So how can we generate all of these ideas, and how can we narrow it down to be interesting enough, you know, things like that. Another thing we'll hit today is guiding your research. And a lot of what we'll talk about within this portion is questioning and critically thinking about the topic that you've chosen. And then we'll go into collecting relevant data and asking ourselves what kind of research is there, where can we go to research, and things like that. And then lastly, I'll jump into how to develop that thesis statement, you know, with a sort of a general formula within English writing. So first, oops, something happened. All right, so first, what is a topic, right? So our topic is a general idea of interest. So we've all heard of what a topic is, right? So it's often just a name or a word, you know, in most cases, but sometimes it's just, you know, 2 or 3 ideas together. So in this case here, for an example, we have 2 ideas within computer game and violence, right? We have these 2 ideas that make one topic. We also have costs in college education. Again, 2 ideas for a topic. And then we have automobiles as one idea, and then so forth. We have racism as one idea, women and rights as two ideas to make one topic, sports and advertising, two ideas, and so forth. So a topic is a great place to start, right? But the problem is that topics can be very broad, right, for a paper. And that means that the topic is very open and there's no sort of focus. An example could be this automobiles portion. So just saying automobiles, right, it can mean a lot of things, including like, I don't know, cars, planes, anything that is automatic, anything that's automatic and it mobilizes objects. So choosing a topic can be a little difficult, right? So sometimes we get so stuck at choosing topics and what to write about. So tend to get disinterested or uninterested in things. So the best way to get started with choosing your topic is relating it to yourself, right? So when you relate it to yourself, you begin to be involved within the research and it sort of springs up that excitement, you know, that liveliness. So what I would suggest is asking yourself some questions. You know, what current issues matter to you? And what current events or issues do you not understand? You know, one example can be, you know, yesterday I gave an example into this portion about maybe, you know, asking yourself some questions. What do I not understand myself? And I was talking about, you know, hemp farming here on the Navajo Nation, because some of you may know that there is some controversial issues around hemp farming on the Navajo Nation currently, and I see on Facebook all the time. And I personally don't know anything about it. I've never read anything about it, but it is a current issue, right? And people are well aware of the situation of hemp farming. So that's a way to sort of spring up some topics to talk about, and it's to ask yourself some of those questions. What is currently happening right now? Other ways to find a topic is just talking to people, you know, your friends and your family. Ask them what matters to them and why. And then you'll also notice that not everyone agrees or disagrees to certain issues or topics when you talk to people. You can also be more independent and just go online and search those topics, search for topics that might be interesting to you. We can always use, you know, Google or Yahoo for topics. And then we can go to libraries, writing centers that are online and things like that. So then once we have our topic, right, we can then begin to develop it even further. It's when we develop the topic further. And this is where we begin to consider, you know, things like our audience, you know, our purpose and contextual requirements, you know, by your instructors or your professors. And then once you have your topic, it's great to ask, why might my audience care about this topic? You know, what might they already know about? We want to involve our audience as much as possible, right? So because that's who we're ultimately writing for. And this also helps eliminate some ideas that, you know, could not be strong for research. We want to involve our audience as much as possible because, again, that's who we're writing for. And then next, we can ask, you know, purposeful questions like, how does this topic help me address the assignment's purposes? Will this topic expand my learning, and so forth? How can I shape this topic into a purpose that will interest my audience? And then we have context, you know, taking a look at things like length requirements and the complexity of your paper. You know, does everything that I'm gathering right now, is it enough for my instructor or for my professors, or does it have enough purpose for me to write everything about it? So then once we have our topic, right, and we feel that it is strong, we can then begin to narrow it down because, you know, we could still have this very broad topic. So a narrow topic is sort of like a specified topic, usually related to things like, you know, specific place, you know, time, actions, groups of people, and etc. Because there's a lot of categories in which we can relate a topic to make it narrow and more specified. So in this case here on my screen, we see that we have global warming, right, as my topic. And this is still very broad, and it can mean anything, within global warming itself. But when I relate it to, let's say, a location, I can say global warming education in elementary school. Elementary school being, the location in which I related global warming to. So relating it to these things here can help narrow your topic down even further. Same thing with time. So if I attach time to global warming, I can say global warming over the last 25 years. And same thing with actions, consequences and remedies of global warming. And then groups of people, relating it to politics, government interests in prevention of global warming. So that's the best way to sort of start narrowing your topic just a little bit more, which is adding another idea on top of your topic that you have, but relating it to, person, a place, or thing. So something like a noun. So these are actually the 4 common, categories that you can relate a topic to with specific place, time, action, groups of people. All right, so once we have that narrow topic, we want to begin questioning our topic that we've chosen, right? This narrow topic is broken down a little bit more, and we want to begin guiding it or, shaping it to become strong and enough for research to fulfill the requirements you want it to have, or to generate enough sources to support your claim that you're making. So, how do we do that? And the best way is literally questioning the topic you've chosen, right? Questioning that narrow topic helps you determine if your topic is stable enough for your audience. And a great way is, the technique of, this art of persuasive speech. There are other ways to play with the art of language, depending on what you're writing and things like that. We have something called the rhetorical triangle, which is the art of appeal to, credibility, emotion, reason, or logic, through the concept of ethos, pathos, and logos. Those are some other techniques that we can use to sort of gather sources, sort of make our topic even stronger. In this presentation specifically, I'll be going over, questions that guide persuasive speech. We have these questions here, the questions of fact, questions of definition, questions of interpretation, consequence, value, and policy. And I'll go ahead and go into each of these and explain its meaning and the purpose and why it's important, and I encourage you to use them. So the first one is questions of fact. So here we have our narrow topic, right? And now we have that narrow topic, and we want to start asking the topic itself, like what happened? Who was involved? Where did it happen? And when did it happen? This is where you're utilizing those 5 W's plus that 1 H, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So these questions here in the questions of facts, they focus on what is or what is not true, what does or does not exist, what did or did not happen. Then I will eventually explain the importance of this technique later in the presentation, but it relates to how we generate more sources that we want to use. So then the next one is questions of definition, right? And here we're looking at the meaning of the word itself and analyzing how we can use the meaning of words towards our research. These questions, they focus on defining your topic and, appropriation of the usage. So, what is the thing or issue under discussion? What is it made of? Let's say if it was an object like, turquoise or something like that. And, we would ask it, what is in turquoise? What makes it a turquoise? And then we can grab those things that we answer and we can use that towards our research. And then lastly, we have what is the expected way of using it, right? In context. how can we use a word within our research itself? So then the next one is questions of interpretation. This is where we focus on developing ideas and how we can incorporate our ideas into our writing. So we are asking our topic, how do we understand and make sense of what happened? How are we to incorporate facts and definitions into a story that makes sense? So here you're actually asking on how you can interpret the topic to your audience. You yourself are wanting to know how I can use this topic in my writing. Therefore, how your audience will understand how I write it to them. So you're sort of like a translator in between the audience and this question. You're sort of a translator in a sense. So this is hugely related to the previous two. So we're sort of like in this cycle, right? So we started with facts, and then we went into definitions, and now we want to know how we can use the facts and the definitions to interpret into our writing specifically. So that's what the questions of interpretations is. And the next one is questions of consequence. All right, the questions of consequence. So these questions focus on the problems related to your topic, right? So you want to begin looking at, the downsides or the effects caused from your topic. What caused what happened? Like an example could be, earlier with the hemp farming that I talked about. I can ask here, what are the effects of hemp farming? Just like this question here, what are the effects of hemp farming? Who is affected by hemp farming? What changes might result from hemp farming, and so forth. So this is where we start to see sort of that negative picture and begin looking at possible solutions into your topic here. And then the next one is questions of value. This is where we consider valuables in terms of what's good or what's bad, what's moral or immoral, just or unjust. What can we consider to keep, or what can we consider to keep or remove that is valuable for my research? So we ask, is what is at stake useful, worthy of praise, or worthy of blame? What audiences will value the matter at hand? What do we say about the issue? Which of our values are called upon us as we make judgments about what happened? So these questions here, they allow you to identify different sides of the topic in relation to how people think or feel about topic you've chosen. Will they care about your topic or will they not? And then lastly, we go into the questions of policy. So these questions focus on what should be done, what procedures and laws, what laws should change, what policies should be followed, and so forth. So you'll be asking, given the circumstances, what should we do? What rules or policies should we make or enforce? What laws should we write or enforce? So this is where we start to offer those solutions that we ask within the questions of consequences. So we're offering solutions to the problem. And that's the sort of the end. It's sort of, again, this is sort of like a cycle. So we began with the questions of facts, right? Where we look at the topic and we ask questions to find the facts. Then we ask about the meaning of the topic, right? The definition portion, which then we grab these facts and these definitions to ask how we can interpret it into our research. And then now we know that we start to look at the consequences of the topic, asking ourselves, what do people value? What do they not value? And then how can we offer solutions to all of this that we're talking about? So it's basically a process in how to strengthen your topic to, to its fullest potential. So then using these question categories related to that art of persuasive speech can help you see these areas here, areas of research you've never considered, or even thought about, it opens up more possibility. It can help you begin to eliminate and or sort of elaborate on things that are more important. So it may also cause you to rethink, your stance or your purposes. It also helps you see questions your audience might have that you can answer right away, and then the specified research directions you need to take, and then lastly, whether your opinion on the topic is well informed. So the sole purpose of asking your topic, these questions here, is for you to sort of critically think about your topic even further, to allow it to expand, to seek those areas, that seem more interesting or should be more spoken about. So then, using what we learned so far, I'm going to do an example here. So we have this minimalism, right? And this minimalism is very broad right now. And I sort of did a parentheses here to sort of narrow it down a tiny bit. So I added lifestyle to it, so minimalist lifestyle. Then if I were to narrow that down even further, I start to attach this topic to relate to another idea. And when I do that, I relate it to why people choose this lifestyle. So now we're researching this portion here. Why do people choose a minimalistic lifestyle? And from there, we start to question our topic with these question categories. And with the first question of fact, I can ask my topic these questions related to the facts of it. So I can ask, how long has the notion of minimalism existed? How did the notion even start? And then if I were to ask questions of definition, I could ask, how do different people define minimalism? And then so forth into interpretation. What do people choose to own fewer? Why do people choose to own fewer things? Who do people believe that a minimalist lifestyle helps them be more free? Same thing with consequence. What happens when people own fewer things? What can they do that they couldn't do before? Who benefits from a minimalist lifestyle? Question of value. When people choose to own fewer things, what do they value instead of stuff? And lastly, questions of policy. What policies encourage us to own many things if everyone lived a minimalist lifestyle? How might policies change? So answering these questions or asking them, it helps you find sources actually related to your topic. They are also great for identifying areas that you specifically want to talk about. Let's say you found several articles, into this question here: how do different people define minimalism? And you found several articles on how people around the world, how they define minimalism. And over here, maybe you found 2 or 3 articles on how policies can change, if everyone converted to live minimal. So this sort of opens up opportunity and gives you several options to dive into when you want to begin doing research. Maybe you just want to talk about just this specifically, how to define minimalism. And then then you can choose that area and then just specifically write within that area alone. All right. Let's see. So then from the previous one, I was explaining, whoops, where is it going? Using these questions here and you're answering them while you look online and you're looking for those answers, it sort of helps you discover, those new words and those new phrases, those keywords and so forth. And these words that you find while you're conducting research helps you, search for those sources. So for my topic, for minimalism, I have these words here that I found associated with minimalism. So we have minimalism, frugality, the simple life, things like anti-consumerism, which relates to a person that is not a consumer, that doesn't want to buy things or current things. Maybe I want to do research into that related to minimalism. So once you answer those questions, you begin to seek and begin to discover these keywords and things like that. So then moving on, so we have our topic and we narrowed it down, right? We questioned, we critically thought about the topic itself. And now we go into collecting the data, the sources, while looking at the kinds of research there is, where to research and things like that. And I think the two that I'm actually going to go over is the kinds of sources and where to actually find research. Now, this is in relation to here at the Net College. So then here, the kinds of research is based off of, the kinds of sources is based off of the type of research you're doing. So research is typically divided into, primary, secondary, scholarly, and popular, which then goes into primary sources, secondary sources, academic sources, and popular sources. And I'll go ahead and explain each of these in the next slide. So for primary sources, first I'm gonna talk about primary research, right? Primary research is where you yourself are actually conducting the research. You're gathering this data by utilizing, asking, if you were interviewing someone, you're actually collecting data yourself, things like polls and surveys and things like that. So that's what primary research is. And primary source is anything that gives you direct evidence about the people, events, or phenomena that you are researching. Primary sources will usually be the main objects of your analysis. If you are researching the past, you cannot directly access it yourself. So you need primary sources that were produced at the time by participants or witnesses. So basically, what this is talking about, what primary sources are, it's sources and data that you collected yourself, or someone else conducted the research. They collected data themselves, and they were directly involved in that topic. And this will become more clear when I talk about secondary sources. So here are actually some primary sources first, the examples. So if I have a topic within history, if I'm seeking primary sources, I can seek out, letters and diaries, because letters and diaries are written by people, and I'm using their research that they've conducted research on their own. They wrote the letters and the diaries, and I'm just using that for, as a source. Same thing with photographs and video footage, official documents and records, physical objects. And same thing with art and literature. We have novels and poems, paintings and art installations, films and performances, and so forth, into laws and politics. We have court records, legal texts, government documents, sciences, empirical studies, and statistical data. So then with secondary sources, secondary research is basically you yourself, you're conducting this research, but you're using primary sources. You're gathering, let's go back to the history portion with the letters and diaries. I'm using that portion, but I'm analyzing the letters and the diaries itself. That's what secondary research is. I'm conducting research on primary sources to conduct my own research. And it'll become clearer in the next slide. But basically, secondary source is anything that describes, interprets, evaluates, or analyzes information from primary sources. So this is where you'll see a lot of books and articles, documents, synopses, encyclopedias, textbooks, reviews, and essays, and things like that. So some examples of secondary sources, let's say we have a novel, right? A book of some sort. And if I'm conducting secondary research, I'm analyzing that novel itself. And that becomes what I wrote about this novel becomes a secondary source for someone to use. So same thing with painting, someone did the painting, but I'm analyzing that painting now to, and what I wrote about the painting becomes a secondary source for someone. So when we have secondary sources, these are mostly articles articles we find online, the majority are secondary sources because they critically analyze other people's work, and that's what we use to to cite our sources and things like that. So here are some examples and the differences between primary and secondary source and how they're actually related. So letters and diaries, that's as a primary source. And then secondary source, biography of the historical figure. So this biography is about these letters and diaries, which makes it a secondary source. And then essay by a philosopher, article summarizing the philosopher's ideas. Music recordings, secondary source is academic book about the musical style. Results of an opinion poll. Secondary source can be a blog post interpreting the results of this poll. And then the third one is the academic sources. This is also known as scholarly. So the main thing about scholarly sources is that they're written by high qualified experts and scholars or researchers. And there's usually a peer review involved and a whole bunch of a list of references at the end of the text because they're citing a lot of research within their own research. So here you typically see things like books and academic journals, which are always written by scholars and experts. So their purpose for academic sources is to actually just spread knowledge. Then the last one is popular sources. This is popular sources are written for the public audience, for general audience, and they're usually public domain. And here, this is where you'll find things like books, magazines, websites, and blogs. So things that are, they're not restricted to a certain language or anything like that. And we use popular sources sometimes, and I can go over that in the next slide as an example. So as an example, let's say we chose this question here, back to my minimalism topic, and I did the questions all the way through. And now I want to research and answer one of those questions by going online or anything like that. I want to start conducting the research. So if I were to take this question here, what happens when people own fewer things? So here's the question of consequence. What happens when people own fewer things? Our main goal when we look at this question here, you can begin to figure out that our main goal here is to seek statistics, right? And to seek results, to seek surveys and polls that answer the question of this. What happens when people own fewer things? We want to know what happens. And when you start to look for sources online, you want to identify which ones would actually help you, to answer these questions. And primary sources, if you want to do primary research into this, we can use primary sources because, you can actually conduct the research yourself, right? You can ask these, you can put out surveys, you can put out polls for people to answer and things like that. Or you can use someone else that did that already and just use that source for yourself. That's what primary sources are. Someone that did the research already, you have that statistics, so we can use that primary source for our research. And then for secondary sources, I don't think there would be a lot into secondary sources. So the goal of this, after we try to seek these things, we look at these 4 options that we have and which ones would which ones would be best for us. And just by looking at this, my initial thought is just looking at primary and popular sources, not necessarily secondary and academic, because academic involves extensive research. It's really, really complex into one topic. And just by the word minimalism, I don't think it would be very such a research topic that people already conducted research into secondary and academic, but you can sort of be open and try to look for sources within those areas. But my initial thought with trying to gather this information for this question, I would result to primary sources and popular sources. Popular sources mainly for, looking at blogs and looking at popular websites to see if anyone, there probably is people out there that have, asked questions within minimalism, because I think minimalism is a very trendy topic, to date. And yeah, so this is just an example, just to identify what kind of sources you need to seek from asking these questions and so forth. So then the next thing is, how do we find those sources, right? And the best ways are just to start simple search using, Google or Yahoo. Some search engines, when you first punch in a topic into Google, sometimes they'll bring up some, articles and things like that. That's sort of the basic way to start finding those sources. But some other ways is using online scholarly databases, such as InfoTrack, LexisNexis, and EBSCO. These provide access to latest research in hundreds of areas. You have newspapers and magazines. You want to consider looking at popular magazines, the credible ones like New York Times, the Time Magazine, Wall Street Journal. And lastly, try to utilize, library databases. They offer a lot of information. They do offer things locally if you want to go to, the Net College Library offers things that are locally as well. The problem with this is that you miss out on accidentally stumbling upon a book or magazine that might just be the perfect source for your research paper. But what I want to stress is the importance of avoiding, Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is not, I say it's not a credible source because anyone can actually go into Wikipedia and edit, information that's within Wikipedia. And it's very simple to sort of edit information in Wikipedia. All you have to do is create an account and then just go to a page, and then you can actually just hit that edit button and then just type anything that you want within it, and it changes it and it's public to anyone. So that's one thing about avoiding Wikipedia. But what I want to show you guys from this point here, how to find sources, I wanted to show how you can actually utilize the Net College Library. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen here. All right. All right, so here under the main Net College webpage, right, we have, all right, here on the main Net College webpage, we're gonna actually scroll all the way to the bottom here. And you'll see here in the footer, you'll see library. So once we hit that, it'll take us to the Net College's library portal. And this is where we can find everything associated with the library, books, movies, and music, resources at the library, resources for students, for faculty, staff, or the community, locations, and so forth. But what we want to focus on within this is this portion here. So resources for research. When we click on this, this opens up, the databases that the Net College has embedded into their library itself. And everything within this here, they're embedded databases, including, things like, we have this EBSCO from the slides that I just showed you. So they've actually done their research to embed all of these databases available to students across the world. They made it available to the Net College students in the one area here on the Net College Library. So let's say let's go back to the hemp farming again. If I want to research anything within hemp farming, right? I would assume it would be something environmental. Could be environmental. So we can go into environmental science here, or anything like climate change or something like that. So we can click on one of these databases, and it'll direct us to another database. This one's with EBSCO. So here I can actually type, let's say climate change. So let's say climate change. When we just hit climate change, it actually brings up tons and tons of, articles that we see here. And this is what we want to try to avoid, is just hitting climate change. And that's where our narrow topic comes into place when we're going to start searching for sources. So let's say we narrowed this down to maybe climate change effects on, let's say coral reefs. This one looks interesting. Then we hit search. This brings everything that over 100,000 number to just 49. If we see anything that's very short, that means that this narrow topic here is actually hitting these articles. We're getting hits on articles that relate to that specifically. And that's exactly what we want when we're researching and finding sources. So here we find things about how climate change affects coral reef and things like, there's 49 articles, and you can actually change the types of sources that you want. So here, these are actually academic journals. So these are written by, experts within this topic here. And you can change the type of, each database is actually different, but there should be options to refine those results. So here we can focus, maybe we want to focus on magazines or academic journals and so forth. So each database is actually different in how you want to grab these sources. So that another thing about the Net College library is that we also here at the Net College, if you're looking for newspapers, newspaper articles, magazines that are local here on the reservation around the Four Corners area, newspapers like Nauvoo Times, Daily Times, Gallup Independent, and things like that, things that are local around this area. The Net College actually embeds those, those types of newspapers that are already embedded into the Net College library as well. And I think you can actually find full articles within Access World News and JSTOR. I think those two were the main ones that had these local newspapers embedded into their database to find specific articles that were in the papers. And the reason why that's good is because nowadays we have to purchase, a subscription to Nauvoo Times to read a full article, or we have to actually go to the store to buy a Nauvoo Times and things like that. But this is a good resource to use to actually access the full article and so forth. So we try to look at Access World News for those, or JSTOR, I believe. All right, I think that was it for the library portion. So that's a way to actually find sources. And these are actually divided into different subject areas. So here we have automotive, anthropology, art, business and economic databases, computer science databases, English, education, environmental science, all the way down to psychology. And then Native American studies as well. So that's a good resource to actually use when we're looking for sources. All right. So then now, back to my presentation. Where did it go? So now that we got our topic right, we narrowed it down, and now we guided our research by critically thinking and asking it questions to generate all of those questions. And we started researching, started to look at keywords and key terms. We collected the data within the research that we conducted, and we're just now gathering all of that information together. Now we have all of this information, and this is a great place, a great part of the process to start building that thesis statement. And this is where you're going to use the data that you found and your topics to build that thesis statement. So a thesis statement is typically a sentence that states your topic and the purpose along with, the evidence, the supporting details. So it serves as this summary of, the claim that you're going to make within your paper itself. So, great theses also can allow you to structure your essay, how the way you conduct your thesis and how you say your thesis will, direct the structure of the essay and how your reader will understand the ideas you'll be discussing in your paper. An example of that, and this is a general formula that works for me, and I've found that this formula actually works with any type of writing, with research, with base narrative writing, argumentative writing, and things like that. And this thesis formula is, involving the topic plus the control idea plus the evidence. And this sort of helps, shape the way you're going to conduct your research, the way you're going to talk about your paper specifically, what your purpose is going to be. And I think I have an example here. So we have this example of the thesis construction, right? We have topic, control idea plus evidence. So what we have here, we have my topic. We'll go back to the minimalist lifestyle. That's the topic I've chosen. And this was the controlling idea that I chosen. 5 people choose a minimalistic lifestyle. But this is actually going to change because of all the research that I've conducted. I've asked all those critical questions towards my topic. And after doing all of that, I can choose something else to talk about within minimalist lifestyle to focus on. So here I'm just choosing, minimalist lifestyle helps people live a good life. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Now we have to add the evidence, the why, the supporting details. And I've chosen these 3. Maybe minimalist lifestyle helps people live a good life within mental health, within environment, helps the environment, and helps me financially and things like that. So using these 3 things, we can then put them together to build this thesis statement. And an example can be this. So here, living a minimalist lifestyle helps people live a better life, improving mental health, financial instabilities, and the environment. So within this sentence here, our thesis, we're involving the topic, minimalist lifestyle. We have our controlling idea, helps people live a better life. Now add the evidence, how it improves mental health, financial instabilities, and the environment. And it doesn't all actually have to be in this order, topic, controlling idea, and evidence. We can actually shift things around to make it, to fit the language that we want. And here's another example. So choosing a minimalist lifestyle focuses on improving mental health, financial instabilities, and the environment. Therefore, helping people live a better life. So same thing here, we have minimalist lifestyles or topic, improves mental health, financial instability, and the environment, which is our evidence, helps people live a better life, which is our controlling idea. And then once we have our thesis statement, this is where we begin to see how our paper is going to develop just by looking at this, because this is a general summary of what we're actually going to be talking about within our paper. And when we look at the sentence and break it down a little more, we see that the evidence here is underlined. And these are underlined because these are the main topics that we're actually going to focus on when we start to structure the paper itself. So here, I'll go into mental health first, the whole portion of mental health and how it improves, how it helps people to live a good life. And then we'll go into financial instabilities, and then the environment, and focus just on those 3 things. Then we close it all up at the end, and that would be our paper. So let me go back. So this is actually crucial, figuring out the thesis statement, things like that. And we sort of, let's just move forward. Whoops. So then just sort of like as a review again, we have sort of like this cycle, right? And we began with finding the topic. We began with guiding the research. We asked those critical questions. We narrowed down, asked the questions. We collected the data, and now we built this thesis statement and so forth. So here you'll see that it is sort of in this process, right? And looking at this process, we begin with finding that topic here. And then we narrowed it down, and then we collected the data, and then we built our thesis. But anytime we feel that our topic isn't strong enough, we have to restart no matter what back to this number one stage here. And this is just good so that if we break the cycle anytime, we go back to the first portion, we start to find a different topic and we narrow it down, we do the research, and then we build a thesis statement. We want to make sure it always has this purpose and it's able to be stable, using this cycle. But anytime you feel that it's not, we should always begin back at number one and then go back into the cycle again. And this is sort of related to, our way of thinking, right? And our way of life as Diné. So our way specifically within, Diné philosophy. And, within our Diné philosophy, we have this paradigm, right, of we have Nantakis, Nahatah, Ina, and Siasin. And within this philosophy here, starting with Nantakis, we can begin to think, critically think about our topic, and we narrow it down enough for us to move into planning to grab those resources, and then getting all of that data. So then we plan on how to use it, how can we implement it into our writing, and this is where we can build into our thesis based off of our thought and our planning stages. And then we move into CSN, where we evaluate and reflect on what we just worked on. And if we don't like what we presented, if we don't like it, we have to start back over at number one again. And then we have to rethink about it, plan into it, and so forth. And then this sort of, once you've gone through the cycle, once you got your thesis statement, you evaluate it, and it's enough for you to move forward. And then we move into the thinking stages again. And this is where we start to think about how we can develop our paper using that thesis statement, planning for it, and then actually writing the paper, and then reflecting on the paper as a whole itself. So it's just never-ending cycle, within our Diné philosophy as well. All right, so that is actually it for this webinar. So, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me within the Q&A, or if there's no questions, we can just end the webinar. I am going to go into more of the research process later on in the semester, maybe early October. And that's where we're actually focused on developing the paper as a whole, focusing on purpose, language, and things within that sort. But I also have another webinar coming up next week, on Thursday and Friday, where we'll be focusing on APA and MLA citations, just citations only. And that's where we'll go into in-text citations. With MLA, we'll go into the works cited page and how those two are related, and how to, relate information between the in-text citation with the works cited page. And same thing with APA, with in-text citations and to the reference and so forth. And we'll dive deep into how to do those in-text citations even more if like you don't have an author or a title or a year and so forth, page number. And then after that, the beginning of the month, October 1st and 2nd, which is another Thursday and Friday, I'll be going over, how to proofread, some techniques and tricks into how to proofread and how to edit your own paper and things like that. Did you want to add anything, Deanna or Audrey? All right, so Deanna actually posted a quick questionnaire in the chat box. It's just an evaluation of the session, but if there's no questions, I believe we can end it here for today. And then I shall see everyone next week, Thursday and Friday for the MLA and APA citations webinar. So thank you again for everyone for joining us today. Again, my name is Kwan Yazi. I'm a professional writing tutor with the Diné College Learning Center. There are several ways to seek tutoring, to schedule tutoring. The first option is going through our My Diné College, which is where, let me just show you guys really quickly. So we have this My Diné College way at the top here. We can click that. We can log in with our login information within your Students tab here. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see Learning Center resources. This is where everything about the Learning Center is actually at. We have our Facebook and our YouTube page. You can schedule tutoring sessions. So if you click this, it'll direct you to another site. This is where you can schedule a tutoring session for 1 hour, 30 minutes, or 15 minutes. You can schedule group sessions, workshops. You can just contact us. There are all of these other resources here for MLA formatting and citations. You can download them, keep them as your references, and so forth. So a lot of good information within this portal itself. You can also just utilize this proofreading drop box here. If you need something that needs proofreading or simple edits, you can submit your assignments within this portion. You just drop your paper in the drop box. And then you have all of our information here, the tutors. We have some videos that are embedded into this internal website, a virtual tour of the Learning Center, and so forth. So this is this is where we're actually operating, is from this internal website. There is also another area here within the main Diné College web page. Here on the main page, you'll see online groups and tutoring sessions. You can click that. And within this first page, you'll see schedule an online session. Just brings up a little pop-up to schedule the same site as this one. So that's where you can actually find us for if you want to schedule tutoring or anything in that matter. So thank you guys for joining us today. I appreciate everyone who joined us. So I'm going to end it at that. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great weekend. Yeah, stay safe, everyone.